Hey guys, thanks for tuning in to another video on ForgottenWeapons.com. I'm Ian McCollum, and I'm here today at the VHU, the Military History Institute in Prague in the Czech Republic. We're taking a look at some interesting experimental Czech pistols in their reference collection, like this one, the vz.52. This was manufactured by vz in Strakonice. It was, as you can tell from the designation, the second gun that they developed in 1948, hence 482. And it was developed by a pair of brothers. Czech firearms often seem to be developed by brothers. In this case, it is Jan and Jaroslav Kratochvíl. And at the time they developed this, the Czech military, this wasn't really intended for the Czech military. The Czech military was way more interested and concerned with submachine guns and rifles. So vz puts this project together. They do present it to the Czech military, just, have a look, here's what we did. The military thinks it's vaguely interesting, but not a priority, and so vz instead ends up looking to sell it internationally. Now, a couple things to touch on here. Mechanically, this is a fairly unusual pistol in that it is a roller-locked system. There are a couple other roller-locked pistols out there, but not very many. It's beautifully made, it's very well machined, it's carefully engineered. It is mechanically a much better pistol than the vz.52 that was ultimately adopted by the Czech military a few years later, which it is fundamentally based upon. So even though the Czechs weren't really interested in this gun, they would become more interested and they would ultimately adopt a pistol derived very directly from this one. So let's go ahead and take a closer look at it, and I'll show you some of the differences between this and the vz.52. Some pretty obvious similarities here to the vz.52. Let's start with a brief look at the markings. Pretty simple here. We have the vz logo, Česká zbrojovka, Czechoslovakian small arms manufacturer. This means like national company in Strakonice. It is marked 9 for 9mm Parabellum. On this side, we have a commercial proof mark and the serial number 2 on all the major parts. And the bluing on this is really, really nice. This is not like the phosphated, sort of rough-looking pistols that the Army eventually adopted. This is a gorgeous example. At any rate, the Kratochvíl brothers also developed the pistol that would be the vz.50, and you can definitely see basically the exact same safety mechanism here that they would have on that other pistol. Later in this thing's development, the safety lever moves back behind the grip where we know it on the vz.52. But for the time being, this is a double action or single action pistol. We have the safety here, that's the safe position, that's the fire position, and if you push it all the way down, it decocks. Magazine release is up here. Gives us an 8-round magazine of 9mm Parabellum. That was the standard Czech military cartridge for the first couple of years after World War II. That's what all of their experimentation and development was done in. Kind of looks like a Walther P38 magazine a little bit. Now, disassembly is going to involve taking this latch right here and pulling it down. Then we can pull the slide. Let's see if I can do this. Whoop, there we go. Then we can basically pull the slide slightly back and it comes right off the top. So this is just a locking block that allows the slide to disconnect. And then of course we have our roller locking mechanism. So this is short recoil roller locked, and the way this works is that these two rollers lock the barrel into the slide. So when the gun fires, the slide's going to start recoiling backward. The barrel is locked, locked into it, and we have this rectangular lug right here sitting in this rounded rectangular recess. So this lug can't move. But as the whole thing starts to go backwards, because this lug is locked in place, it's going to retreat back. And as soon as it moves far enough, the rollers are able to move into the inside of the barrel extension because of this little narrowed tab there. So when it gets to that point right there, the rollers can move in. They no longer lock the barrel into the slide. The barrel stops moving, the slide continues moving, and it extracts and ejects the empty case. This is exactly the same mechanism as typical roller-locked guns, the MG42 being probably the most common and well-known example of a short recoil roller-locked action. So that comes out of the slide. You can pull the spring off, and now it's a little easier to see. We've got this piece attached to the front of the barrel that controls the ability of the rollers to come in and unlock or press out and lock into place. Now we have a couple of other features here up in the slide. We have this, which is a firing pin safety. So unless this is pressed upward, like so, the firing pin can't come forward. If we look at our firing mechanism, we have a little finger right here in the middle. When I pull the trigger, that finger lifts up right there, which is going to deactivate the firing pin safety. Then the hammer falls and the firing pin can go forward. We also have this feature, which would not last long in the prototype series. That is a loaded chamber indicator. So when there's a cartridge in the breech face, it's going to push the extractor out, of course. And when it does that, this pin slides out on the left side, and it's both visible and tactile and tells you that there is a cartridge in the chamber. And I can take this screw out, pull the grip panels off. There we go. Take the back one off first. That one comes off, and you can see the back of the frame here. There is really quite a lot more frame, or a lot more grip, than there is frame. And we do have a coil hammer spring concealed back there under the grip. So when the hammer cocks, it compresses that. And there you have the CZ482 early prototype that would lead to the vz.52 fully field stripped. So a couple thoughts on this from a practical matter. The single action trigger pull is not bad. It's not great, it's a little heavy, it's a little creepy, but it's not bad. The double action trigger pull on it is really, really heavy. It's actually a fairly short throw, but oh man, that is a stiff double action trigger. Also worth pointing out that it does lock open when empty, stays open when you take the magazine out. When CZ started trying to market this internationally, there was one particular country that was interested more than anybody else, and that was Switzerland. Now, Switzerland at this time, in the late 1940s, was experimenting with a bunch of new handguns. They were going to adopt a new pistol. It would be the Pistol 49. Ultimately, they chose to adopt the SIG P210, but they were experimenting with a bunch of kind of weird mechanical systems. The one that most notably comes to mind is Waffenfabrik Bern's gas-delayed pistol. And so if someone presented you this and you didn't know about the vz.52 and they told you it was a Swiss trials pistol from the late 40s, this would fit perfectly into sort of the Swiss design aesthetic of finely made, finely finished, perhaps more complicated than a pistol needed to be, weird mechanical system that fits the Swiss thing. Of all the features in this, the thing that the Swiss weren't so interested in was the double action trigger mechanism. So the Swiss trials model was going to be a single action only gun, which is even more Swiss. Ultimately, CZ was in the process of preparing 2 more examples to send to Bern, or to send to Switzerland for trials, when the whole thing just kind of ended. It's not entirely clear whether the pistol was formally rejected by Swiss trials or if they just lost interest or there were political changes. It's kind of just as well that the Swiss adopted something else, because politically speaking, this is right about the time that there is a communist takeover in Czechoslovakia, and the notion of the Swiss buying, a Western-oriented Switzerland buying small arms from an Eastern-oriented Czechoslovakia would have been politically impractical. So that was the most interest they got internationally. Now, domestically, the Army would come back to this pistol. The 482, was the direct predecessor to the 491. Of course, Czech naming conventions, that would be the first CZ model of 1949. That pistol at that point was still in 9mm Parabellum. In 1950, and it goes through some more substantial Czech military trials. In 1950, the Czech military is pushed to transition from 9 Parabellum to 7.62 Tokarev, and so this would lead to a conversion of both the Czech submachine gun projects and the pistol projects to the Tokarev caliber. That leads to the CZ513, so the third gun of 1951, which is almost indistinguishable from the final adopted vz.52 pattern. Over the course of this series of developments, the gun, its magazine release moves from the top, sort of a Western style top of the grip to a heel release. The loaded chamber indicator goes away, the caliber changes to 7.62 Tokarev. And it unfortunately gets a bit uglier and a bit less reliable. They have to scale up and strengthen a bunch of the parts. It ultimately turns out to be a not particularly successful adoption by the Czech military. At any rate, it all began here with the 482. So I'd like to give a big thanks to the VHU for giving me the opportunity to show this to you guys. They have a fantastic public military museum here in Prague, and if you have the chance, if you're visiting or if you plan to visit, definitely plan to set aside a couple of hours or a half a day or more to go through the museum. Lots of cool military historical firearms there, as well as an entire wall of strange Czech prototypes that are a lot of fun to take a look at. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching.